honestly, but I can worry about that anytime. So you do.
All right.
Yeah,
So one more thing before we go.
we're already
Man.
live. We're live already. But yeah, go ahead.
Recording in progress.
So this is the
Worm.
actual manuscript for The Worm Ye Shall Fight by Philip and Marsh and Tanny Yangsing.
That's the manuscript.
It's the second half of Other Nations.
Oh my God. Did that ever get printed?
Yes,
Is that part of Other Nations?
it is. It's the second half of Other Nations.
Holy smokes.
And like I was like, what is this? It's like it's a preprint or something, and then it says actually approximately 61,000 words. So this is a manuscript.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. Now you can say what you like about this book, but
And the authors.
yeah, but it's kind of cool. To find this stuff. And you know, some of this look, they put out a whole metric fuck ton of material. And some of it was good and some of it was bad. But it was fun.
Pete is getting rid of or taking care of Rick Lay's books. So
Yeah. Anyway.
yeah, wow. Yeah.
So
hey everybody. Hey Paul.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Glad to be back.
Yeah, glad to see you. Hey, all right, so let's do introductions, everybody, and then talk to Paul. And then we've got a couple of the folks. They're doing a fundraiser. The folks at Old Moon Quarterly, they're doing their 2025 fundraiser, and they wanted to pop in for a few minutes and talk about that. So it's kind of stuff you guys would like. I don't know if you're aware of them or not, but they're fairly new, last couple years. So
It's kind of a dark sword and sorcery, isn't
Right.
it? Yeah, yeah.
exactly, yeah. So they'll be along after a while. But anyway, I'm Mike Davis. If this is your first time watching, I'm the host of this thing.
Which makes us the parasites. Yay.
Yeah, why don't you introduce yourself? You got a prize, don't you, Matt?
Yes, I do. I'm Matt. I run Lovecraft Easy Movie Night. Last night we had a blast watching Sinners.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you.
Whatever you say, whatever people say about it, I don't see how you can't watch that movie and not just have a great time being entertained. It's not really a horror movie. It's not really a vampire movie. It's a movie about characters in a time and place.
It's a movie
And the
about
music
moles.
was completely fabulous. It is just great fun. Bridget was there. She can comment also.
Yes, it was amazing, and the music was amazing. It really made the movie.
There were some great music sequences in it.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard some complaints that the music is not right. Some of the music's not right for the period,
That's the whole
So
point.
what?
but that's
It's
the
like-
whole point, right?
That's
So
the
there are
whole
people-
point in that moment. Like they even like explain it for the people in the back why it's there.
People in the back.
It
You mean on
worked.
the
That
short
scene
bus?
works. That scene works so well because of that.
Yes.
I
haven't seen it.
People will
I haven't
complain
seen
about
it.
anything.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
say
and
when
you
like
often
it
do.
says when the music is so real it reverberates through time. And then they show things
Oh,
in
I
different
like it.
time periods and layer the different time periods of music at the same time. Like it literally explains it when it happens.
And it was great.
All right.
Yes,
maybe
it was
I'm gonna watch
awesome.
it tonight, maybe. I was gonna watch it last night, but yeah, didn't work.
All right. So the prize is, turns out I had 2 copies of John Langan's novel in hardcover, House of Windows. So if you want a chance to win a hardcover copy of House of Windows by the one and only John Langan, send an email to easyandprizes@gmail.com and put Windows in the subject heading. We'll draw a winner in 6-8 weeks. You got plenty of time to get your entry in.
John's got a new book coming up, new collection. It's called Lost in the Dark, and Victor Lavelle sent me an email. A few weeks ago, I watched your deep background on the Patreon with John Langan. I loved it. I was like, thanks. And then I see that he's introducing Lost in the Dark. I'm like, yeah, you're cheating. Yeah, aren't you? No, I'm kidding. So anyway, John, yeah, I tease John a lot, but John is one of the best writers working today, seriously, and
I wouldn't call it work.
well, yeah, work, and it's introduced by Victor Lavelle. So
To be honest, he struggles so hard to get the words on paper
I know.
in a timely way.
who
So for
does?
him,
John,
Langan.
I don't
Yeah.
think he
Mozart famously
struggles
was
to get them
quoted.
on paper. I think he
Yeah.
struggles with deadlines, but
Mozart was quoted famously as, "I
And so
make
much
music
shade.
like a cow pisses."
Hmm.
Most writers aren't that facile.
well, he's enormously talented, and I really hope he never watches this because then he'll know I said that.
No, that's when he mysteriously logs on 2 minutes later. That's what
Yeah.
happens.
What? Mike? Davis? Did you get new meds? Pete.
What? Oh,
Wait, well,
me.
let's have Bridget's already talked, so let's have her introduction next. So
Hello, everybody. How's it going? I am Bridget. I am a artiste, composer, producer, creative horror weirdo.
let's do Alan.
That's me. Alan Hughes, an artist. I work on the Lovecraft e-zine webpage, add movies and games from time to time, and international traveler of late.
Yes.
Yeah, you were in England the same time as my wife and kids.
Oh, wow.
Well, it's weird they didn't bump into each other then.
Well, it's a big but okay, so my daughter bumped into one of her classmates at the Eurostar terminal in Paris.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And Pete, was it you that at one time was talking about the movie Charing Cross 84 Charing Cross Road?
Yes.
I ended up on Charing Cross Road, and there were indeed a lot of bookstores.
It is still a bookstore central.
Yes. I
Yes.
thought of you when I was there.
Hey, listen, for those listening live, how's my sound? Something screwed up the other day when I did a recording with Brian Evanson, and the sound's fine. It's just recorded from another mic. So please comment in the side chat, let me know. And have we gotten everybody with introductions? Oh, Pete.
Bite me. I want you to know, Mike, that
Yes.
last weekend I drove down this horrible road to get to Bridget's house so that she and I could surprise you on the e-zine podcast with being together.
Oh, and I didn't have one because of
And
my
then
Yeah.
you canceled it.
I'm so sorry.
It's 3 hours down that road,
Oh,
Bridget.
that's the only reason you went to see Bridget is because of me. Yeah, right.
Well, wow.
He
I-
didn't come to see me, and I'm
Uh,
disappointed.
So
Well, you're
sorry
nowhere
that
near. Yeah.
my huge dental pain inconvenienced you, but yeah, that would have been funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been funny. So we had that all planned out and then we canceled it. And
Yeah,
I didn't
sorry.
spend the night. So Bridget, what I didn't tell you, but maybe you figured it out, is that the 5-hour trip turned into 7 hours.
Yeah, I think I saw something on Facebook about that.
We
That's
didn't get
crazy.
into the because of all that rain. We didn't get into the hotel till 2 o'clock in the morning.
See, you should have just stayed here.
Yeah.
I
But
should
no,
have put
Pete
you
and
up.
I-
It would have been about 5 hours out of your way, but so what?
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
But yeah, instead we did have some dinner, and we went and looked at some random used bookstores, and that was a very interesting used bookstore trips.
Yes.
Really?
The-
You'll have to
Maybe
tell
you'll
us
have
how
to-
the master does it.
Yeah,
No,
maybe
no,
you'll have
because-
to tell us about that trip after we talk to Paul.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
More on
man?
that
Hey,
later.
Mark.
Do you two characters know each other?
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah, well, at least virtually, and you know,
Mhm. All right. Well, Mark,
Been-
you stumbled in just in time to introduce yourself.
Oh, hi. I'm Mark Rainey, author of many cosmic Lovecraftian terror things, and editor of Death Realm and Friends to all of these people except when I am not.
Me. It's me.
Don't forget to talk about the used bookstore. I got to hear this after we talk with Paul. So
Hey, I'm content to hear about the used bookstore too. So.
Paul, how are you? Good to see you again.
I'm doing pretty well, thanks. Yeah, I'm glad to be back. I had to badger Mike one day and say, "How come you never had me back on the show?"
Not exactly what he said.
And so here I am.
Yeah, no, I'm
I
glad.
shamed him into inviting me.
I don't, you know
It's
what?
been a
I think
couple
what
of
you said
years.
was I don't have anything new to promote, but
Well, that's true
I'm
too.
always
Yeah.
up for it. And I was like, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, you can come on anytime you want. So I don't say that to every guest, you know. So,
Yeah, right. Well,
so
anyway,
Tells me to stay
it's
away
been a few
whenever I want
years,
to.
yeah.
but I'm glad to be back. So,
So for those out there who may not know who you are, could you introduce yourself? You've been around horror for a long time. You've been writing and editing for a long time.
yeah, I've been around in one way or another since, well, late 70s, early 80s. Published my first story in 1983 in Dave Silva's The Horror Show. Um, First novel in 1989. I do
Ni-
have something to promote, by the way. That
The Night
first novel,
Prophets.
Night Prophets, is coming out in a limited edition next month through Twisted Retreat.
Oh,
They do the monthly subscription boxes. You get a book and I don't know, bookmarks, candles, and other horror goodies every
s-
month.
what?
It's a really good service. I got Graham Masterton's signature plate out of that.
Yeah.
He doesn't sign anything. So yeah, it's a great service.
So
Well,
what do we
I'm
Google
one of the
again for that, Paul? What do we Google
Twisted Retreat.
Okay,
TwistedRetreat.com, I think, is the
if they
web
want a
address.
copy of the Night Prophets.
Yeah, I'm going to be one of the books in July, so right around the corner. And I have not seen a physical copy of the book yet, but I saw a couple videos during the production process, and it's going to be gorgeous. A faux leather cover and gold and silver foil and metal corners on the corners, and it's going to be a beautiful book. So.
Wow,
Um,
sounds great.
there's been, quite a few editions of the Night Prophets over the years, but it's actually never been in any kind of hardcover. So I'm excited just about that to have the thing in hardcover and a
Congratulations.
beautiful one. Oh yeah, and it's got my signature in there too, which I don't think lowers the value more than a couple of bucks, but there's a signature
Well,
plate in.
most writers who come on the show before or after they send me one of their books with a signed note in there. And so maybe the reason why you didn't get asked back is I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
I got it. I got it. No, I know how these things work.
I
Alan,
had
could
to
you
send Mike a whole bunch of books before
and then I
he
returned them.
agreed to have me on
Then I returned them. No, I'm kidding.
it.
Alan, can you find a link to the Night Prophets and put it on the side chat for people? Paul, I've got a link to your website. I don't in the show notes. I don't know if it's there, but on your website.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, okay. So
Well,
Gordon,
this is
you got
the
to the Night Prophets.
this is the Cemetery Dance paperback from a couple of years ago, which is available, and that's what the interior of the Twisted Retreat version is. The Cemetery Dance version, and it's just got the beautiful new covers and interior and page edge artwork and the signature page. So
Well, you had gotten far enough along to your first to the Night Prophets. I'll let you continue your introduction.
oh yeah, and then after that, that was late 80s, and then after that, a whole bunch of things happened, and I sort of disappeared for a while, a long while. My editing career continued.
Did your
I
family miss you when you disappeared?
yeah, yeah.
Did they? Before you
I
go
think
on,
after a couple of years, they finally noticed and
you
called
remember
it
that
in.
day I went out for cigarettes and never came back? Yeah,
Yeah.
surely you noticed. No,
So,
someone wants to know how much the hardcover is. Paul, sorry to interrupt you.
well, I don't know. You have to go to Twisted Retreat
Okay,
because it's part of the subscription box. And I
right,
think they have
right.
I'm pretty sure they have an option to buy just the book or to buy the whole box,
Right.
so,
Okay.
which has all the other goodies and things in there. So I would go to twistedretreat.com and see what they say. Yeah, so I mentioned Dave Silva of who bought my first short story for the horror show, and he and I ended up becoming good friends and collaborators. Around that time in the late 80s and early 90s, we edited a couple of anthologies. Postmortem was our first one, which was a collection of new ghost stories. And then we followed that up. Splatterpunk was happening, and we tried to catch the wave. And so we put out an anthology of urban horror called Dead End City Limits. And then after I disappeared from the writing scene in the 90s, Dave and I continued to work together, and we started the Hell Notes newsletter, which some of you may remember. It was a technological marvel when we started it because it was before the internet, really. But we put out every week we published an issue of the newsletter that came out in three formats: email, hard copy, which you could subscribe to, or fax. And you could have the newsletter faxed to you. We did that for the first at least a year, maybe almost 2 years before, and we dropped the fax first, and then later we dropped the hardcover or the hard copy, and we continued to put out the email version for about 5 years, and then we were just burned out putting out a newsletter like that every week. Was exhausting.
It's a wonderful service, but it's a lot of work for after a while. It gets to be.
Yeah.
It still exists as a site.
Well, it does, and that's we ended up turning the newsletter over to somebody who ran it for a very short time and turned it over to somebody else, and after a few years it came back to us. Only this time I was too busy to help out, and Dave did it alone as an email newsletter for a few years. And then he got bought out, and so Hell Notes continues as a site, but it's as a website, hellnotes.com.
Yeah,
But
still, that's a pretty cool legacy.
Yeah, it's original legacy.
That y'all started way back when, and the title at least continues.
I think we started. I think it was 1997 when we started that, and we did it together for 5 years. But yeah, people laugh now when you say you put out a fax newsletter, but that was kind of the height of fax machines.
No, I did give a little laugh, but it was mostly just thinking the research I had said 1995, but just thinking that that's innovative for the time, for 30 years ago.
I don't even know. Yeah, I don't know how we thought about it because we usually weren't that innovative, but and it was a nightmare every week, because you're trying to fax. We had I don't know, maybe 50 fax subscribers, and that was one of my duties. And you're trying to fax these things, and people get busy signals, or you're calling their you're sending it to their fax machine. They're picking up the phone. Hello, hello, hello.
Right.
And so we were glad to dump that after a while.
Individuals, though, actually did. It wasn't just companies. People actually had fax machines. My parents had a fax machine here. So anytime I wanted to get something like Hell Notes, I'd give them this number, to my parents. But,
yeah.
And then it kind of graduated to, I was in real estate from 95 till 2010 or so, and I remember in the early 2000s having my own quote fax machine, but you could buy a service online then to where someone could fax you something to a dedicated number, and then they would automatically it would be sent as a PDF to you. So that was pretty cool. But
right.
I
think the only people who use fax anymore are doctors' offices for some reason, insist everything has to be faxed. So they may be the last places, doctors' offices and clinics and
so much legal stuff. And why? I don't understand. But yeah, a lot of things have to be faxed when it's legal.
Yeah. Yeah. So
about that.
So that was the story of Hell Notes. Along the way, I also wrote a, a sort of, I call it dark suspense. It really didn't have a genre, which was one of its problems. A novel called Alexander's Song. And like everything I've done, it has a long checkered history. And finally, I
Just
tried
remember,
like
this is a
crazy.
family program, okay?
Yeah,
Long checkered history.
I tried like crazy to sell that thing. And I had a couple of big name writers behind it who hooked me up with their agents, and everybody claimed to love the book, and but they said we can't sell it. It's too long. It doesn't have a category. It doesn't fit anywhere. It's not horror. It's not suspense. It's not mystery. It's not literary. It's a little of all of it. And and so the thing just sat, and that pretty much killed my writing career for a long time because I had a lot of time and effort and heart and belief invested in that book. Finally, in 2012, I put out an ebook version of Alexander's Song. And then in 2022, Cemetery Dance put out the first print version. So that was, well, what was that? 22, over 30 years that that book sat before it finally
Wow.
came into print. And
So always keep them in your trunk. Don't throw them away.
yeah,
Um,
that's right. And then, you know, I published some short stories along the way. And Mike, you've been real kind to the Whispered Echoes collection, my short story collection. Um,
it's a
yeah,
damn good collection. For those of you who haven't read Whispered Echoes, man, it's fantastic.
yeah.
Really is.
And that's available
Could, I don't think you
from
really
Crystal
said.
Lake.
I'm sorry. Go on.
Oh, I just said that's available from Crystal Lake if anybody's interested.
I don't think you really said what Alexander's Song is about, the plot with because I had made a mental note to read it when I was done with Whispered Echoes a while back, and then it just, you know how the TBR piles can be,
Yeah.
and revisiting, doing research, this week for this, I came on it again. I was like, oh yeah, right, and it looks really intriguing, actually. So
Well, real briefly, it's about a school teacher who is a big fan of a man named Alexander Bassett, who was a very popular, successful writer back in the 40s and 50s, and then kind of disappeared and ended up dying in the 1960s and is largely forgotten. But this school teacher is a big fan of his work, and he decides to research the man's past and possibly do some writing. He envisions not a book necessarily, but maybe a series of articles or to try and revitalize, get some interest going in Alexander Bassett again. So he
yeah.
takes time off work and goes and visits the writer's hometown and finds that nobody there wants to talk about this guy. He was a sort of socialist progressive writer, and this is the 1990s when I wrote this and when it takes place. And everybody said, "We're not interested in that guy. He was a commie. You know, we don't care. You know, you mean he was a writer? I just knew he was a commie. You know, and nobody will talk to him. So he has to, you know, really dig. And of course, this is before the internet, so it's libraries and face-to-face interviews and things like that. And he gradually begins to uncover a dark history with this guy, that this author was followed all through his life by mysterious deaths, that anybody who ever got close to him ended up being killed. And he has to uncover the story behind it.
It sounds like
It
if you were trying to put it out today, there would be a lot more, there would be a lot less resistance to publishing something like
Well,
this.
I think in general, there's less resistance to cross-genre things than there were back then. You know,
Yeah.
back when I was first trying to sell this, this was the time when, you know, every book they put the genre right on the spine, so the bookseller knew where to shelve it, and the fans knew where to look for it. So you looked on the spine, it said horror, or sci-fi, or fantasy, or mystery. And I had an editor tell me, "What would we put on the spine of this book?" because I'm basically and always have been a horror guy, it has, I think, a lot of the tone of a horror novel, but it's not a horror novel. It's not supernatural. It has elements of mystery, but it's not a whodunit, where you follow along with a detective and pick up on the clues and try and solve the case in your mind before the detective does.
Yeah.
It's got suspenseful moments, but it's not a pure suspense novel. It just didn't fit anywhere. And back in the day when they put the genre on the spine, that made it a hard sell. Plus, it was, I was not a total unknown, but I was a virtual unknown, and and it was a very long book. It's about 600 pages, and that scared them away because they said, "What would we have to sell this thing for, and how would we market it if we did take it?" It had a lot of strikes against it, and I went at that time from thinking this was going to be my breakout book. This was going to be the thing that catapulted me from sort of this mid-list horror guy into something bigger and better. I thought it'll come out in hardcover and I'll get a 3-book deal out of it.
And a
And
movie.
in the space of a couple of years, I went from this is going to be my breakout book to this is my tombstone. This is the tombstone on my career. So, but I'm very proud of it. It's still the favorite thing I've ever written, and I'm glad thanks to Cemetery Dance, it's in print now and available, and it
Is it still available
always,
in Kindle too? On Kindle?
yes, it is. Yeah, and there's an audio book too. So,
Oh,
although
nice.
it's a long haul in audio, I would think, but I'm usually not an audiobook guy, and I think that's a long book.
People listen to Stephen King books in audio format
That's
too.
true. Yeah, and fantasy trilogies and
Yeah.
everything. So
Lord of the
maybe it's
Rings.
well anyway, yeah, it's available in Kindle and so
Oh, it's on
yeah,
Kindle Unlimited, Paul. That's great.
yeah,
For those who don't know.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna check it out. Sorry, I
Some of this
forgot until
reminds
now.
me of Paul Lafarge's book, The Night Ocean.
Oh, one of my favorite books of the last 10 years.
Happen to
Yeah.
have it right here.
Oh wow.
Yep. I knew you were gonna talk about it.
That was
I
not planned at all. But yeah, the whole
It
sort of
wasn't.
that it's not a horror book, but there's horrific elements. It's not a literary book, but there's literary elements. It's not a
yeah,
mystery, but Paul Lafarge, Lafarge did a really good job with that, and so did you in Alexander's. Um, so yeah, but it's hard to categorize those books.
yeah.
No,
Well, and
no.
that may be a good example, although Lafarge's book is just a masterpiece as far as
Yeah,
I'm concerned. But that is a good example of how in this day and age publishers are a little bit more open. And plus you have a lot of self-publishing options and things that
Right.
didn't exist back then too. So
Just to jump in real quick on what Pete said, The Night Ocean by Paul Lafarge. Of course, same name of the short story written by Barlow and Lovecraft. But
yeah,
we had, for those who want to go back years ago, we had Paul Lafarge on. He's passed away now when the
yeah,
book came out. And I remember it was a really great conversation. So if you
yeah.
guys want to check that out at some point, go right ahead.
yeah.
So, but yeah, I was going to say another one like that. I held it up, but The Broken Hours.
Yes. Which I
Oh,
still don't think I still don't know that I understand the ending.
I'll,
But that's okay.
yeah, it is a beautiful, beautiful book. I mean,
hold that. Can you
boy,
hold it up again, Mike? I
yeah,
didn't.
I think you'd like it, Paul.
I
Let
would.
me zoom in on me. Sorry. Here we go. The Broken Hours,
Oh,
Jacqueline
I'm not.
Baker.
Somehow that one escaped me. I'm not familiar with that.
Well, it's about this guy in 1936 Providence who goes, he answers, he accepts a position as a live-in secretary slash assistant for an unnamed shut-in, who you can
Okay.
probably guess that is.
Yeah.
But it's just, if you like, I guess the point is you look at that cover and you're like, oh, Lovecraftian book. It's not, it's, I don't
It's a
know.
slipstream book. It there the ending is very ambiguous, whether it's something occult, something normal, something delusional.
Yeah.
You're not sure. At least that's how I read it.
But you like you said in your introduction to Whispered Echoes, I revisited that today. Charlie Grant was your idol. I never met him, but I love his work, as I'm sure I've said to you.
Yeah.
And, quiet horror and all that. It's not the only thing I would call this, but yeah. Anyway, this is about you, but I thought fit in with what you guys
No,
were
no,
doing.
I'm happy. I'm happy to learn about it. I'm surprised I missed it. When did it come out, approximately?
Matt, do you remember? Let me look.
Well, you have the book.
I know, but I don't want to open it.
Paul, you worked Charles Grant's
2016.
name into Paul worked Charles Grant's name into Alexander's song.
Yes, I did.
Really?
Yes, a few
Yeah.
other names.
Yeah. Yeah, Charlie Grant was the guy that was the guy I wanted to be when I was starting out. And I was aware, that he was not a huge bestseller and that he had to work like a demon and struggle to make ends meet. But I just admired the way he moved from project to project, editing and writing. And of course, I loved his writing. And and I love the Shadows anthologies and just
Yeah.
he was such a great guy, and I was so honored to, meet him and work with him a couple of times. And yeah, he was the guy when I was young that I wanted to grow up to be Charlie Grant.
Same,
Yeah.
I would say.
Just to briefly get back to Alexander's song, that must have been disappointing is probably a really understated way of putting it for you. Um,
Yes.
so I'm really
Not as disappointing as never being published in Death Realm, but disappointing.
You and me both, Paul. I
Yeah.
apparently, subbed and didn't even
Wow.
get read.
I never published anybody in Death Row. I couldn't. I just
Paul,
didn't
you're
publish
fitting in
anybody.
just perfectly today. Given, yeah,
No,
I've got a whole shelf of Charlie Grant behind me. I turned around and was looking at it. So yeah.
Yeah, no, the fate of Alexander's song was definitely a disappointment. Like I said, it really stalled me out. And that combined with a few other things, I my wife and I had twins, and they had a nasty habit of needing clothes and toys and things like that.
Unbelievable.
And I had been writing and editing full time for a couple of years, 3 or 4 years, and I needed to leave that behind and go get a 9 to 5 again. And the 9 to 5 became more like a 18-hour a day commitment for the next 17 years as a newspaper editor. And I never got out of the office. And so my writing really just stalled out. But the whole thing began with Alexander's song not not happening the way I had expected or wanted it to happen and believed it should have happened. But
I'm really glad that it was finally able to be put in front of people. So
yeah, and one of the champions of that book that helped make that happen was a guy that the last time I was on this program, you had me on when you had Kevin Lucia as a guest.
mhm.
And Kevin read the book and became a champion of it, and really helped generate some interest in it and ultimately get it published. So I have Kevin to thank for that.
That's great. He's another one that who Charles Grant is his idol. He
Yeah.
loves the quiet horror thing. We've had him on, besides when you were here. And you didn't meet him then, did you, or did you know him before?
No, no, we knew each other
Yeah, I
before.
thought so.
So yeah, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong about this, but he originally had contacted me some years before that after reading the ebook of Alexander's song, and he tracked me down. And so, yeah, we had been in touch for quite a while before I.
I think if memory serves, Bridget can speak to Kevin Lucia's work too. I mean, probably everyone here, but uh, if you want to. But it's if you like quiet horror, Paul Olson, Charles Grant, you should definitely check it out.
Yes. Great work, and he did a lot of great work with Cemetery Dance, really. looking
So,
for helping out a lot of authors. So good stuff.
yeah. So this was this early 90s or so, you said? Alexander
Yeah,
Song?
I believe it was 91 that I wrote Alexander's Song, and then I spent several years trying to sell it. I'm not trying to drive traffic to my website, but if anybody's interested in really digging into the backstory of Alexander's Song, uh, when Cemetery Dance was getting ready to publish the paperback, they asked me to do a blog post about the writing of the book and the inspiration behind it. And of course, like I do with everything, I really overwrote it, and it ended up as a three-part blog post, which they were kind enough to publish on the Cemetery Dance site. But I now have it on my website, the three parts that anybody can go and read anytime they want. And it goes into the whole background of what was going on in my career and some of my influences for Alexander's Song, which included Peter Straub's Mystery and a couple of other things. And interesting discussion I had with my agent at that time, who would have preferred that I was writing sequels to the Night Prophets instead of trying adventurous new things. And we eventually parted company. And so if anybody is a glutton for punishment and wants to, hear a little more about how Alexander's Song came to be, and then what the writing of it, and then what happened afterwards, and the struggle to sell it, it's there on my website, and it's there all the time, and it's free. So
Well,
feel free
first
to
of all,
go
we
read
are
it.
trying to drive people to you and to your website. That's why
Well,
you're
that's you. I'm not trying to do that.
well,
It's
your
you.
website address is in the show notes. And Alan linked to, is that the article in Cemetery Dance too? Yeah. Or
Yeah, it should be.
yeah, I think
I think
Alan
they
linked to
published it
that.
in three parts. So that's the way I wrote it. I think they published it as three installments.
Oh, by the way, Scott watching live told me my image is reversed. I don't know what the heck's going on. I'm gonna have to get my son in here, my tech guy, before the next podcast. But anyway,
You are the antimatter, Mike.
yeah, I'm from the down under, not down under. The, what? Never mind. Now I'm thinking of Star Trek. The
No, the mirror
the
universe.
mirror
I think.
universe. Yeah. Thank you.
Stranger Things. Isn't that the Down
The
Under?
upside down. Yeah.
That's
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
yeah. By the way,
Paul, were you ever? Oh, sorry, Mike.
No, please go
Paul,
ahead.
were you ever at any of the cons like Nikon or World Fantasy or World Horror, any of that?
I did World Fantasy for a long time. My first one was 1979 in Providence. It was the return to, of course, it started in Providence in 75, and then they returned in 79. Stephen King and Frank Belknap Long were co-guests of honor. And yeah, I did World Fantasy for about 12 or 13 years or so before.
Yeah, I did back in the mid to late 80s. I went to World Fantasy regularly, Nikon, and the early World Horror Cons. I was just trying to remember if we actually had bumped heads together at any time in person. I just couldn't recall
We
for
could have
sure.
at World Fantasy. I never made it to Nikon. It was always one of those next year.
Oh God! Well, that's where I got to know Charlie. I mean, we were never like good friends or anything, but very cordial acquaintances, and he was literally one of my favorite people to ever to hang with at all, like at the cons.
That first fantasy convention, Providence in '79, with King and Long as co-guests of honor. Charlie was the Toastmaster.
Oh yeah.
So it was so long ago he didn't even have his beard. He was clean. Clean shaven. Charlie Grant looked like he was about 12 years old.
Yeah, I just because we are pretty much of an age, and so many events and things from those days have gotten really hazy, except for things that really, really stood out.
Yeah. Well, you get up to my neck of the woods too. I'm in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I know
Oh
you.
God, I love the
So,
UP.
so the next time you get up here, let me know, and I'll
Where in the
point to.
UP?
Well, I'm in just outside Sault Ste. Marie in Brimley.
Oh shit.
So,
We
so
were
if you're
Whoa.
heading toward Tequamanon Falls or something, I'm just a stone's
man,
throw.
we were there. Well, it's been a few years now, but my wife is from Midland in the lower peninsula, but we go up and we stay in Munising and Marquette and
Well,
Whitefish Bay. We've been all around.
and you've been on Mackinac Island, and that's where I grew
Oh
up.
heck yeah, we did that last year. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I grew
his
up on the island.
collection, Whispered Echoes, all those stories are set up there.
Yeah. Oh, I am so there.
Yeah, all but
Okay.
one. All but one.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm,
so if you get up this way again, definitely let me know. We'll do it in person.
Possibly in the next year, we're talking about definitely want to get up that way.
Okay, great.
yeah, sorry, Paul, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But
Oh, that's
if you
okay.
haven't
It's
gotten to
turned into the
Whisper-
dating game now.
Yeah.
If you haven't read, it's very much, and Chet Williamson does a great job of alluding to this in his preference or introduction or whatever it was. That was Chet, right? I'm remembering that.
Yeah, Chet.
Another great guy.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And yeah, it's all its place. That's the UP is as much a character as any of your characters. You know.
Yeah, he really humbled me with that introduction. He called me a regionalist, which sounds so important. I wanted to run off and add it to a resume or something.
Paul F. Olson, regionalist.
Regionalist.
Yeah.
Just as an aside, one
Yeah.
of my books for young readers in Elizabeth Massey's Ameriscares book is set in the UP. It's called The Dragon of Lake Superior, and it takes place in Munising. And so, man, that would be awesome to get together with you sometime up there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can show you places you probably haven't seen.
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot I haven't seen, but I have found some mighty cool places.
Wait a
there.
second, I just got a story idea. That's the beginning of a horror story. Paul,
Two horror
introducing you to a place you've never seen before, and
Yeah.
why we never saw Mark Rainey again. Also, you're probably aware, or maybe you're aware, but if you read detective novels, there's a series that started in the '90s by Steve
Hamilton.
Yeah, A Cold Day in Paradise is the first one.
He used to live right basically just down the road from me. He
Really?
doesn't live in this area anymore, but a lot of his stories are set I live in the town of Brimley, and a lot of his things are set around Brimley and in the Bay Mills Indian tribe, which is based here. And yeah.
One of the characters tells him that something to the effect of they're living on the edge of the world, that kind of thing, right up there at Lake Superior. And anyway, yeah, it's a good series. It's not horror; it's detective fiction for anyone interested. So yeah. How was Long, by the way? How was he in person?
He was even then, which was maybe what? When did he pass away? Sometime in the mid 80s, probably late 80s. I don't recall.
Right.
Somebody can tell me, but he was very frail, very shy, very quiet, but a real kind of old world gentleman. So I had an opportunity to talk to him for about 20 seconds, and he couldn't have been nicer and more polite, but you had to lean in to hear what he was saying because he spoke almost in a whisper, and moved very slowly and hunched over. Kind of sad to see. And the contrast, I thought it was great having the co-guests of honor at that convention, and I was new to World Fantasy at that time. So I didn't know that they didn't always do that. But you had King, who was on the rise. In fact, bit of trivia, the weekend of that convention, that 1979 World Fantasy, it was 1994? Okay. He lasted longer than I thought. That weekend when Stephen King was co-guest of honor, he had his first book hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. That was The Dead Zone.
Wow.
He had a couple of Times bestsellers, but he hadn't had a #1. And the day of the banquet, when he and Long gave their speeches, the book had just been announced that The Dead Zone hit #1. So here you had King, young and vital, and really on the upswing, and then you had doddering, frail Frank Belknap Long. But he sat on a couple panels, a couple of Lovecraft panels, and had a little bit of input, and it was an honor to meet him. The best thing about going to those conventions in those early years was getting to mix and mingle with the last of the Weird Tales crowd.
Talk
You
a,
know, I
well, talk a little bit more about that because I wouldn't have thought to ask you, but it's it's something I would love to hear. I'm sure the viewers would.
well, I'm trying to think of some of the guys who were there. Manly Wade Wellman was a fixture at those things for years until he became ill. H. Warner Munn, who, the werewolf of Punkert, that guy. I just had lunch with him one day at the convention in 1980 in Baltimore. He was standing near us in line, and he asked if he could eat with us, and he entertained us with tales of corresponding with Lovecraft. Hugh B. Cave was another one who became something of a friend of mine, a really great guy. And when I did my magazine Horror Struck, which I published for a few years in the 80s, he contributed some things to that.
Do you know, I'm sorry, Paul, did you know Peter Cannon? Do you know Peter Cannon?
I met him once, and
The,
I don't remember which convention it was, but I
the
don't really
reason
know.
I'm commenting is Peter Cannon got to know Frank Belknap Long in his later years, and when he had basically been forgotten, and he went to visit him a few times in New York, and he wrote a little memoir called Long Memories about those visits near the end of Frank Belknap Long's life.
Yeah.
There's another guy, a scholar, I think his name was Henry Beckwith. His
Oh, yeah.
shtick was he was from Providence, and he went and talked to everybody who had personally known Lovecraft. So it's like, so he published stuff about Lovecraft at one remove.
He led a tour of Providence at that first convention I went to, a bus
Yeah,
and walking tour.
yeah, that was the very first walking tour thing they did. But
Yeah.
the point is both of those people, Peter Cannon and Henry Beckwith, were able to write a book of these kind of brief memories and encounters. You might be doing us a service, if you even
Yeah.
if you had notes or correspondence to write another couple little articles like that or something about the
I
people.
wish I had, yeah, I wish I had paid more attention and taken notes instead of just kind of being a, wide-eyed fan sitting. I wish I'd paid attention to what they were, some of the stories they told. Another one that I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to meet and mingle with a little bit was Fritz Leiber. Um,
Mm.
in 1980 in Baltimore, we went, one of the convention events was a bus tour to the Poe gravesite. And we went at midnight, and Fritz Leiber did a reading of The Conqueror Worm. And I'll tell you, Fritz Leiber, with that Shakespearean background and that deep voice that he had, reading The Conqueror Worm in a Baltimore graveyard at midnight around Poe's grave with about
Oh,
20 or
wow.
30 world fan, that's a thing you don't forget.
I bet it was
Yeah.
superb.
I met Fritz Leiber briefly, and this would have been probably early '90s, and by then he was pretty debilitated. He was at I think it was probably World Fantasy, and
Yeah.
he I think he was even in a wheelchair. He was not able to read or anything like that, which was such a shame because he was an idol of mine. I would have loved to have been able to see him in his heyday.
Even in those slightly earlier years than that, he would often just park himself in a comfortable chair in the hotel lobby all afternoon,
Mhm.
and then people would drop by and pay court to him and sit and listen to his story. He was perfectly with it at that time. But he wasn't physically, he was definitely slower.
Sounds
Yeah.
like Joe Pulver, right? Guys, parking yourself somewhere. He would always be outside the hotel door though, because he had to smoke. But same
Oh,
same
yeah.
thing.
That's what Willem used to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
William too. Yeah. Um, hey, Julian. Graham's the one that emailed me, right?
Oh, indeed, sir. My
Okay.
apologies for crashing the party, so to speak.
Oh, no, no. Yeah,
Not my
no. We'll
intention, gentlemen.
get to you guys in a few minutes if that's all right. So,
Oh, by all means.
anyway, welcome. Yeah. Hey, I'll ask you a question about Whispered Echoes, Paul.
Yes,
Um, Now, if memory serves, you published them in chronological order, the order that you wrote them.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Which
yeah, go
that
ahead.
was because I was, not creative enough to come up with any better way to arrange them. So chronological order was perfect.
Well, it's interesting. Do you ever look back at uh, writing? One of my favorites is the very first one, The Visitor. Look back at writing a story, a horror story, essentially about old guys. And look, when you were young, and now from the standpoint of what are you at
Being an
least
old guy.
you're at least over 40, right? Looking back at it
But
from that distance, seem strange, weird, or is it something you've
yeah,
not thought about?
yeah. Well, first of all, I look back at those things as little as possible because, like, I think, like most writers, you're not always proud of your earliest efforts. You're maybe proud that you did it and you were able to accomplish it and write it and sell it, but beyond that, you see all the flaws and the things that you would have done differently even 5 years later, let alone 45 years later.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, sure, definitely. I tended to write about a lot of older characters, and I look back now and say, wow, man, I didn't know anything.
I actively dissuade people from reading my early works because I would like them to still talk to me. Well, I don't know. Pete's read some, and maybe Matt. They've read some of my early stuff, and they still talk to me. So I don't know what's wrong with them.
I don't know what your problem is. The early stuff is good, man.
Yeah, it's what
It's fun.
happened lately. God.
Great. Uh, and then you edited some anthologies and some with David Silva.
Yeah, the two with Dave Silva, and then the third anthology, which came out in 2014, I did with the Cemetery Dance guys, and that was a tribute to Dave Silva after he passed. Yeah,
So there are
so
people watching now who may not know who David Silva was. Can you talk about that for a second and why you did that tribute anthology to him?
yeah, Dave Silva was a very important figure in the horror genre in the 1980s in particular, and he was the editor of a magazine called The Horror Show, which he started in 1982, I believe. And his first issue was Dave and two friends wrote all the stories, and they knew it wasn't really cool to just have their own name in there. So they published some of them under their own names, and the rest are all pseudonyms that they made up. But there was he and his two friends were going to put out this horror magazine, and it was in a tabloid newspaper format. After that first issue, which proved very difficult to produce, the two friends bailed and left Dave on his own. And for some reason, he didn't bail too. He decided to continue on, and he switched to a magazine format and published this incredible magazine, The Horror Show. And I'm tempted to try to name all the writers who had their first publications in that magazine, but I know I'll botch the list somehow. But I can tell you it includes people like, well, me, Elizabeth Massey, you mentioned
Yep.
earlier, um, Poppy Z. Bright, uh, Bentley Little.
Yeah.
I mean, and then as the magazine got more and more successful, he also managed to get in, Charlie Grant and Dean Koontz and things like that. So it was a very formative magazine for a lot of us and responsible for getting a lot of us into the genre.
Yeah.
Brian
Yeah,
Hodge,
probably
too.
of its time, it was probably the most influential small press magazine for many years.
I
Yeah.
think it's not an exaggeration to say there would have, without the horror show, I'm sure there are a number of magazines that would not have existed, but one I know for absolute sure was Cemetery Dance,
Right.
because Rich Chismar was definitely inspired by Dave and got a lot of assistance from Dave in the early going. Another one that wouldn't have existed was my own Horror Struck, which was a nonfiction magazine that came out in 87 and 88.
I think I've still got all the issues of Horror Struck
Yeah.
up in the vault upstairs. I think so.
Right now I just have PDF versions of each issue. And I don't actually have any print, but I think I can get my hands on some.
What, Pete?
So,
If I remember,
I wouldn't have done that without Dave. In fact, Dave and I, that Horror Struck is another whole episode that would take us into the rabbit hole. But Dave and I were going to do that together. He was going to continue publishing the horror show, and Dave and I were going to co-publish Horror Struck. And we got everything, we started working on it, and then he realized he was biting off more than he can chew. So he backed out. And although he helped me tremendously with production. And so I did Horror Struck on my own for a couple of years. But that was in the days. The other thing about Dave's magazine, The Horror Show, and then my own, they were done in that era right before desktop publishing became a thing. There were no WYSIWYG computer screens, where you could see things on the screen. Everything just had to be typed in a file, and then you had to put in a bunch of what were called dot commands to tell it how wide to print it in columns. And so you couldn't visualize what you were creating until you had printed it out, and then you had to fix it and reprint it. And Dave was very helpful with me. Because by that point with the horror show, he'd learned all the tricks and traps and the pitfalls to avoid, and he was instrumental in helping me do my magazine. So yeah, the Dave and the horror show were exceedingly influential. 2 a.m. magazine, if anybody remembers that.
Yeah, Paul and Greta Anderson. Yeah, knew them well.
That was another one that largely started because of Dave's influence. And they put out a book called The Best of the Horror Show, a slim paperback volume that a few years later, Cemetery Dance put out a large hardcover, which included the contents of the original paperback and a bunch of other additional stories. And a afterword by me, by the way.
Pete, you
remember Grew by Peggy Nadramia, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Peggy and I were friends for a while, so
yeah.
that was a sharp little magazine too.
Yeah, I don't know, for 100% fact, but I mean, they were contemporary with the horror show.
I'm not sure if she had touched base with Dave or not, but it sure wouldn't surprise me because she's right in that era. So yeah, so and like as I had mentioned before, Dave bought a couple stories of mine, and we just continued to communicate casually and in a friendly manner back and forth, and we ended up becoming very close friends and then collaborators, which led us to do the 2 anthologies, Postmortem, the ghost story anthology, and then Dead End. Postmortem was a very successful book. It did really well in hardcover for St. Martin's Press, and then it was picked up for the Del Abyss paperback line when that was getting launched, and it was one of the first Del Abyss books, and their first book that wasn't a novel. It was short stories.
Pete.
It also had a bunch of foreign editions, which was something that I had never had up to that point, or really since. It was published in Japan and Germany and Spain, and that was a very successful book. And then we followed that up with Dead End, and that was kind of when the horror boom of the 80s was heading the other direction, and Dead End did not do nearly as well, but which is why we didn't have a third one after that.
Pete, you wanted to say something?
So one of the things about the horror show that was really attractive is it was a full-size slick.
Yeah.
Which put it apart from all the other kind of chapbooky magazines that you were seeing. It kind of put it into that same realm as Night Cry and Twilight Zone, in terms of presentation. mean, you could go to your local bookstore and look in the magazine rack, and you would see Fangoria, Twilight Zone, Nightcry, and the Horror Show,
Yeah.
and it looked professional, and it was really attractive to look at.
Especially toward the end when he started doing color covers,
Yeah,
because for a long time he was black and white only, and then he started adding color to the covers, and of course then that just took it to another whole realm aesthetically speaking.
yeah, but it was a beautiful. It was not just a quality book; it looked like quality.
Yeah.
It really sold it.
And again, the number of people that he published in there, and who launched their careers in those pages is really something. Dave passed away in 2013, and that led Rich Chismar and Brian Freeman and I to team up to do the Better Weird anthology. Better Weird was the slogan that Dave used in every issue of the Horror Show. He'd write his little editorial, and then he would sign it "Better Weird Than Plastic" at the end, and then his name. And so we took Better Weird as the title for our tribute anthology for Dave. So that was my third anthology and last at this point.
Oh, I think Brian Hodge is on that list too, right?
Right. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian
I'm
Hodge.
looking at a copy of the Best of the Horror Show up on my bookshelf, and I want to reach up and grab it, but I have to dismantle half the shelf to get to it. I'm afraid to try it, but I could pull it down and look through the contents in there. I'll try it. Talk amongst yourselves.
Brian's got a new book out while he's doing that, and I don't know why the hell I'm reversed today, but it's called Black Hole Sundown.
You're not reversed to me, man.
I'm not.
Oh,
No,
looks like
no, you look good.
Huh?
No, you're inside out, but you're not reversed.
Something. I'm something, all right. Anyway, man, I'm loving this book. It's such a beautiful book.
So, did anybody notice when Bridget walked away that her camera completely slowly adjusted until it was
Yeah.
on the skull,
Yeah, it was kind of
little
creepy.
puppet, and
Really?
recognized as a
That's
person?
why I had to blur my background because it keeps getting confused. Because I have like a skull over here, a skull down here, and a creepy doll, and it keeps thinking that they're all faces.
Yep,
So
it went right to the creepy doll.
that's awesome.
Better
I
Weird.
should unblur so you can see that it's I don't even know if I can hold it up if it'll let me. It kind of
Oh, there
Yeah.
we go.
that's
Mhm.
A little bit.
No, I was.
what do I
fun to
call what do
watch,
I
like,
call him? Stephen McJagger or Mick Tyler, something like that.
Tyler.
I got the book. I don't know
Oh
if you
yes. Here we go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay,
can. The
yeah, there you go.
definitive Best of the Horror Show.
Nice.
Nice.
This was, let's see if I can find the year, 1992, Cemetery Dance. Just looking down the list of contributors, and these are all stories that obviously appeared in the Horror Show. Ramsey Campbell, Dennis Etchison, William F. Nolan, David Scow, Poppy Z. Bright, Nancy A. Collins, Graham Masterton, J.N. Williamson, Daryl Schweitzer, Ardith Mahar, me, Susan Watkins, Gary Razor. There's another guy who I think started in the Horror Show. Bentley Little, Brian Hodge, Kyle Stewart, Janet Fox. Anybody remember Janet Fox?
Oh yeah,
Susan
Scavenger's
Letter?
newsletter. Yeah.
Yeah, man, that was
Yeah.
talk about influential back in the day, before the internet when you didn't know what was going on.
Oh yeah, you'd run to the frickin' mailbox to get your Scavenger's newsletter.
The Robert Weinberg book catalog and Scavenger's newsletter.
Oh yeah,
Learned
yeah.
everything in those days, what was being published and who was doing what. And Steve Rasnick, Tem, Elizabeth
Oh,
Massey, G. Wayne Miller, A.R. Moreland. Quite an impressive list.
Yeah.
We never know who we're helping get a step up with what we do.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a legacy for David and for you.
Well, and that's the thing, I was thinking that same thing when we were talking about Kevin Lucia, the number of people that he's helped just by being a champion of other people's work.
Yeah.
Even before he got to Cemetery Dance and did his couple of years there and the impact that he had, you don't know the good that you do just by, if you like something or someone say it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
such a simple thing to do, but it can really make a difference to that writer and to their career. And
It's one of the biggest things this podcast has always been about, you know. Hey, this guy is they're writing something great. I want to tell all of you about it. They're doing something great or whatever. So,
yeah.
uh, guys, anything else we want to ask Paul before we talk to the Old Moon Quarterly guys? Mark, surely you have more questions
Well, I don't know. Well,
or
maybe
comments.
Paul will remember. Just the other day, as I was cleaning stuff out, I found a bunch of. It's going to be backward, but you might. I found some old business cards from Death Row magazine. This would have had to have been in the well, no, probably early 90s, because I was living on Regents Park Lane in Greensboro. So if you got a rejection slip from me, it probably was from that address.
Yeah, no, that sounds real familiar. I haven't been able to say the word Greensboro ever since. It's just too
Oh,
devastating.
no doubt.
So this is
Yeah.
the second time it's been alluded to that you rejected Paul's stories.
I published nobody in Death Room apparently, because when I was at the last where I was at Nikon, and I was on a panel with like Tim Wagner and Brian Keene and Joe Lansdale, and who else was on there? A bunch of the writers from the day. And Keene finally said, "Who on this panel was ever published in Death Room?" And nobody raised their hand, because I apparently didn't publish any. I probably published somebody, because the magazine ran for 10 years. But I did eventually publish Joe Lansdale. I knew that anyway.
Death Realm and then the Shadows anthologies. Those were the two big disappointments.
Yeah, the Shadows were so good. I had every one of the Shadows.
I tried so hard, and Charlie always said wonderful things, and he'd usually point you in another direction, say, "Send it to this person."
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was the
never
same.
got in there.
Same. I sent probably however many Shadows there were. That's how many times I submitted to them back in the day, and never got in there. And Charlie only had good things to say about my stuff. He just didn't publish it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for doing this, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
With you again.
I'm sorry I had to shame you into inviting me back.
Oh, no.
I'm glad I did.
We're going to talk to the guys at Old Moon Quarterly for a few minutes, and then I've got a couple of other horror things I want to talk about. You're more than welcome to stay the whole time, or if you need to go, that's fine too.
No, I'm definitely staying.
Okay.
Hey, I got here. You're not going to get rid of me now. So.
Yay.
So, Graham, Julian, how's it going? It's my first time seeing you guys.
Very good. Nice to be on the podcast. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, you emailed me about a crowdfunder that you're doing for 2025.
Indeed.
I've got that in the show notes, but can you talk about Old Moon Quarterly for a minute? Tell the audience
certainly
what it is and what it's about.
Sure. Well, we're a magazine we have to call it kind of like sword and sorcery or dark fantasy. If you think of something like Robert E. Howard or Clark Ashton Smith, that kind of, or Tanith Lee, that kind of realm. So swords, lots of people swinging swords, swinging axes, lots of intersection with like cosmic horror, eldritch horror, that kind of thing. Oftentimes it'll be people sort of at the edge of society, sort of outsider heroes fighting against, eldritch deities, cosmic horror sort of entities, that kind of thing. We publish the occasional poem as well, and we also publish sometimes some weirder, not necessarily as action-oriented stories as well. I think in one of our issues from last year, we published a epistolary story told like in the form of a diary that was written in like early modern English. The author did a lot of research on the Samuel Pepys diaries. Have you ever heard of those? They're from like the 17th century, I believe. And it was he wrote a story about a family of werewolves in like Cromwellian England, and he sent it to us. I thought it was really cool, and we ended up publishing it. But for the most part, we stick to the, barbarians and knights and all sorts of other strange people swinging swords.
Who are some of the writers you've published?
Oh, certainly. Well, we've published, let's see, James Ang, does the Morlock the Maker stories. He's been published in Tales from the Magician's Skull, I think probably in every issue, magazine of science fiction, fantasy and science fiction, Blackgate, so on and so forth. We published Laird Barron and John Langan in our last issue, issue 8. Laird sent us a really cool story about Rex, no, not Rex, well, a cybernetic war dog from the future, which was really fun. And I think John Langan sent us a story about a man who is sort of like a fantasy story, a man having an encounter with some undead people in a bar, which I thought was pretty fun. We published E. Catherine Tobler as well. Oh, who else? Let me see. I have a whole bunch of my issues right in front of me.
That works.
Amelia. Oh, sure. Yeah. Amelia Gorman and some Joe Cock and some others as well. Or Coach, or I believe it's how his name's pronounced.
So are Graham, Julian, are both of you guys the editors, or what's your function at the magazine?
Hey,
Oh, go ahead, Julian.
well, we co-founded it together a few years ago. I'm more like the creative director, founder, publisher, patron, and sort of have I'm less well read, so I hope I don't feel impertinent in that regard, but I definitely get the sentiment. So, for instance, on the Lovecraft e-zine, sort of mourning David Lynch, I feel extremely similar sentiments to that sort of man's work and what I like to see and create, or the intensity of it, right? To get to know us very quickly. And so, another interesting thing about us is we're quarterly in an anthology. So, someone like John Langan, if he were to contribute again, could have a one of he could really play with, right? And not need to worry about larger structure, which I think is part of the fun and the appeal, if you're interested in that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I'm the editor. So the staff is Julian, he's the publisher, and then my wife Caitlin and I are the editors. Um, Caitlin does a lot of work with on the art side of things. So the magazine's illustrated, starting with, well, not all the issues are, but these upcoming issues that we're crowdfunding and the previous 2 issues that we crowdfunded for 2024 were illustrated as well. So Caitlin does a lot of the art and the layout and so on, and I help with the layout as well and do most of the copy editing and other editing and so on and so forth with writers.
How long have you guys been doing this?
I think our first issue came out maybe in 2022. I think that sounds right. Yeah, I think in late 2022 is our first issue.
Crowdfunding, this is how you do it once a year, or that looked about right when I was doing a little research on you.
Yeah, we've only done, I think when we initially started doing it, Julian pretty much put up all of the funding himself. Oh, excuse me. But after that, we thought perhaps we could make some better magazines by doing some crowdfunding and get some, goodies like the illustrations in there for people. So we've done one crowdfunding campaign before this, and we're doing this crowdfunding campaign. Our hope would be eventually we have enough revenue just from our backlog and from people buying or pre-ordering our issues that we don't need to do the crowdfunding eventually. But for the moment, it's what we've found works best.
No, there's absolutely nothing wrong with crowdfunding. There are a lot of projects these past few years in horror that would not have seen existence or stayed in existence if it wasn't for crowdfunding. So yeah, it looks like you have 14 days left as of right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that you made 2024's just fine. This is Backer Kit, so that's the crowdfunding that website that you're using. Question: if you don't meet your goal, do you get to keep? How does that work with Backer Kit?
Oh no, I think if we don't meet our goal, everyone gets their money back, and we don't get to keep any of it if I'm not mistaken.
All right, well, we don't want that.
No.
All right, you guys. You guys are more, Mark, Pete, Matt know a lot more about the sword and sorcery aspect of all this stuff than I do. You guys have any questions for these guys?
So, not really, but because I try to actually. You mentioned Tales from the Magician's Skull briefly. Sal and I just sold a story there. So you guys been doing this for a while. You're pretty successful. Um, are you happy with what you're doing? Or do you see where you want to go and you're just about to get there, or or what?
And are you happy
And are
in
you
general?
happy?
I would say, I mean, I suppose I can't speak for Julian. I'm pretty happy in general. I think with the magazine in particular, I'm happy with where we are going at the moment. I think that when we started out, we had zero knowledge of how to publish a magazine, and we quickly got knowledge of how to publish a magazine. So I think we've gotten better at it as time's gone on, and I think that we're going to get better at it as time keeps going forward, hopefully, unless it stops all at once, which would, I suppose, kill the magazine as well. But I think what we want to do is you said you sold the story to Tales from the Egyptian Skull.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first picked up an issue of that magazine, I mean, it is an absolute. Have you read? I assume you've read the magazine.
Yeah.
I have a whole bunch of copies. You can't see it. My bookshelves are in the back, but whatever. It is an absolutely beautiful magazine, incredible illustrations. I think the earlier issue, I don't know if all the issues are, but I know many the issues that I have at least, which I think are some of the earlier ones, are printed on like the old style wood pulp, like the
Right.
original Weird Tales would have been printed on. Absolutely beautiful and excellent magazine. And the late editor, Howard Andrew Jones, was a great writer himself and also a very judicious and I think skilled editor. So I think if we had a vision for where the magazine would go, it would be to look like and have the same quality of both story and presentation as Tales from the Magician's Skull. Um, I think the only thing holding us back, well, besides lack of knowledge and all the other things that are holding us back, one of the main things is that I know Howard had Goodman Games behind them, which I think gave them a little bit more uh, both publishing knowledge and ability to spend a little bit more on getting it like offset print, for example. A lot of our stuff is unfortunately has to be print on demand, just because the economics of publishing, for us at least. But
There's
that was a
nothing.
long-winded answer. Sorry.
No. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Because like, some people get into this business and really grow to hate it quite quickly. It's work.
It is. Yeah.
It is.
Did you guys start this more or less as a labor of love because you wanted to publish what you wanted to read? That's kind of how back you. I am, as you can see, probably of a generation earlier, but I published Death Realm magazine for 10 years, and I what was it, 2 years ago now? I did a new anthology of Death Realm tales, but I got into it because I felt like there was a lack of what I wanted to read in the marketplace. So, and I felt like there's got to be a lot of readers who want to read the same kind of thing. And that's what motivated me to do it. And I'm wondering, is that kind of where you got your start? Is that how you got going?
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Rainey. It's a labor of love, and that is the exact reason why you honed in on it. We wish to see this type of work published, the sort of specific blood and guts, but a higher command or demand of the language necessary, the occasional poem or embellishment or something unusual. And then again, also, like Graham mentioned earlier, radioactive dogs too, written by Leonard Barron himself. What's not to love? So in case it's too much blood and guts and sword, we'll throw you a curveball. And really, I'm very, very happy with how the project has progressed. I understand immediately the doom and gloom that authors or publishers would have, but I'm taking sort of the Gene Wolfe method of remaining with my primary profession and using this labor of love only as that. So if one book doesn't sell quite well, it will not slow me down. And then if one does very well extra, we can pay an extra cent or another author or put an extra story. It always goes upward in this way. And we're already nearly where we could be where if we drop dead, it would work on its own. And so, I mean, that's as much as I'll say on that, unless you have a specific question, but I'm very hopeful and happy indeed.
I think
The
that
old saying was that to make a small fortune in publishing, you needed to start with a large fortune.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, if more I think about it, what a legit question Pete had, because it's it's almost always a labor of love, and that's how it starts. But it's a lot of work.
I,
Yeah.
one of the things I've been going over recently is that, okay, I can sit in a chair and I can write a story. You know, give me 8 hours, I'll write you a 5,000 word story. Not a problem. The but that's only part of the job. You got to send it story out. You got to make changes. You got to track that story. You got to track all your stories. You got to find out when the rights revert to you. Did you get paid? Did you not get paid? Who did you have to hound? Like, who do you have to network with? It's there's writing, and then there's the business of writing, which is an
Business, exactly. Yeah,
completely different job. And it's why you have, managers, someone to manage all your stories and all your work. And God help you if you're being a publisher, because it's not just reading the stories and saying, yes, I want this. There's more. And there's more than I can possibly, not even more than I can imagine. There's more than I can possibly imagine. It's just beyond my knowledge base. And I really don't want to know.
Yeah. I think publishing today, I work through publishers when I edit anything, but like when I was doing Death Row back in the day, it was a physical product. I had to not only get submissions, edit the submissions. When it came to actually producing the thing, I did professional typesetting, but even so, I had to manually type every word of every story into the system, print it out, put down to rubber cement galleys down onto boards, put pictures into it. And now you can, whether you're doing it print, PDF, however you're going to do it, you just pop stuff in. So I
Kids
think
today
the
don't know how
labor,
easy they've got
they
it.
don't
Damn it.
know.
I had to use the transfer letters that you put them on and you rubbed them
Oh,
off.
right. Yes.
Because you could
I
only
had a
get a
lot of
computer
transfer
font.
letters.
You could only get a computer font to be so big. So if you needed a big headline, you did it with transfer letters.
Yeah.
Well,
In some ways, I wish
And you had to
when
do it
I
all
first
walking.
started, when I first started Death Row, if I had the tools available today, that sucker might still be going on. Who knows,
And every time you went to edit a story and type it all out, you had to walk through 5 feet of snow to get it
barefoot,
before and
uphill, both
after.
ways.
Yeah. To send it through the fax machine in the cabin that's 4 woods down.
Yeah.
But even with the tools, like Joe Pulver famously has a story where he wrote a story, but he was unsure about a couple of the names and references in the story, so he actually put notes in his text file that the editor should check this, and they just took his text file and plopped it into the document without reading it.
Yeah.
And just those notes are literally in the magazine.
Yeah, I sort of digress there, but I was getting to the point where, however you produce it, there are aspects to producing what you are, and you have to treat it as a business if you're going to be successful, if you're going to pay authors, if you're going to make a name. I mean, there are hobbies, and there are a lot of people who are immensely happy doing their hobbies, but I think so many people get into, oh, I want to publish something, I want to do a magazine. And when you find out what's really involved with it, suddenly it doesn't have the allure. You're not so enamored with it. But if you guys have been at it for, what do you say, since 2022, I feel like you guys must be pretty serious about where you're going with it. And I admire that.
Thank you, Mark. I think I think that we are pretty serious. I think the one thing the most work I find is unfortunately the promotional aspect. That's probably because I enjoy editing. I might have enjoyed it less if I had to do it by hand, as you did back in the day. My dad, when I was growing up, when I was younger, my dad worked in a print shop, doing all that sort of thing all the time. And so perhaps I might have had a spot as a printer's apprentice in a different life. But doing it on, we use, I think, a program called Affinity. It's a little bit, it's kind of like Adobe Photoshop, but you only have to pay for it once. It's the big appeal for me.
Oh,
You don't
yeah.
have to have a subscription. So it's much easier to kind of finagle with all the formatting and the layout and so on. But that part I find really enjoyable, actually. But it's getting the word out about the magazine. I think all of us are pretty private people. Like we don't really want to, we're not the kind to splash ourselves out there. And I really envy those who like to do that because it's such a skill that you need. It's such a useful and an excellent skill, and it's so important to succeed, especially nowadays, right? When we have a million different things
Exactly.
pointed at our attention. Authors and editors and publishers, especially publishers, who can get their stuff out there. It's such a skill that I admire. And I suppose, going back to what Pete said earlier, I think if there's one thing that I would want us to get better at, I suppose, other than making the magazine look really beautiful and getting really great stories, is getting better at selling and getting eyes on the magazine.
Yeah. I think now more than ever, because there are so many products that you're basically competing with. I know writers and producers love to say, oh, we're not necessarily competing because we all like to support each other. And to an extent, that is true. But there is such a massive amount of product out there. If you don't stand out in some way, you risk getting buried. And it always helps to have somebody who not only is good at what they do promotion wise, but who actually enjoys it, who is spirited.
Yeah, and hopefully
that is not me.
Hopefully being on here will help you guys a little bit. I know that when I received your email, the thing that I receive a lot of emails from for promotional requests, but then I was like, oh wow, they published Laird and John. These guys must know what they're doing. Laird and John wouldn't send their stories just anywhere, and so then my attention was piqued. So I think that helps a lot too. So getting
Well, I'm
noticed.
glad.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that got your attention. I
Well,
think.
and not that I'm so great, but I'm just saying that if I'm human, if my brain, if I was piqued and that got my attention, it will with others as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
So
hope so. I think I know John is writing us a story for this issue, is for these upcoming issues rather, as well. He wrote us a story. So obviously he wrote a story for our last our eighth issue, and I believe this story that he's writing for us now, is the prequel to that story. I think he originally set out to send us the story that he's sending us now, and then, if I recall
that
correctly, he was like,
sounds exactly right.
he
Knowing
he's
John,
Where the
he was
hell
like,
is
well,
Langan anyway? He hadn't been here in a while.
I don't know. See, he's got a book coming up. I'm not going to keep promoting it if he keeps pulling this shit.
that's right. He has a collection coming out from Word Horde, I believe.
Yeah, we're Lost in the Dark.
Yeah, very much looking forward to it.
Introduction by Victor Laval. So it's really, really well. I mean, really, really great. I'm loving it. So, all right. So, everyone, I've got the crowdfunding link in the show notes of this episode, and that ends. Let's see, 2 weeks from now. Is that July 5th? I think you said.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to say that maybe I don't know to ask, or anybody else have any comments before we move on?
Well, I would love to, if I may, just to
Yeah.
expand a little bit more. And so I'll address, the larger elephant in the room, which all publishers and authors would fear, I would say. And yes, I've only recently dipped my toe into this, but it would be readership in general. But so again, the authors, I'm not going to let Graham, take open submissions and leave any stone unturned. But my job is to publicize it. But so I'll be very blunt. I have nothing to lose. I love the craft of what I've watched of your work already and of what I've met from who I've heard today. I mean, I really like everything I'm hearing, and I'd like to know more. So let's say I have X amount of money and I can pay authors this fair amount, royalties, the book cover, the aesthetics, the feel, the pulp. We don't have the same challenges of the actual physical manufacturing, but we're so detail oriented and astute that you might be surprised we might actually miss it, staring at emails, watching hundreds of just blank computer screens. It's almost mind numbing in a worse way. And I used to be a craftsman, so I kind of missed that aspect. But moving on, if I have a finite amount of money and I need more books, now I have 8 books, an anthology. I have a successful Kickstarter. I have a backer kit, which is going to make it one way or the other. Now I have something to publicize, right? I can go for larger fish and I can go for larger funding, which is precisely what I plan on doing. It's already in the works and seeming to do well. The amounts are modest, but the percentages are good. And so in that way, hope, whether it doesn't appear to be much, but I think it's going to be successful. And so I'm honored to be here. And that's my piece. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for coming on. I did forget to say, if I have this right, every time you publish an issue, you publish a free to read story on the website. Do I have that right?
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah, for the most part, we don't have all of them up at the moment, but we are going to be, so the 2 free issues that are going to, or 2 free stories that are going to be coming out next week for issues 7 and 8 are, I believe, going to be Elise Catherine Tobler's story from issue 7, which I thought was pretty fun. It's a story told from the perspective of a sentient sword, kind of like Elric Stormbringer.
That's cool.
Yeah, I was really fond of it. And then the story that we're going to publish for issue 8 is actually John Langan's novelette that he sent us. So we'll put that for free on the website. People can check it out, and then if they like it, they can check out the whole issue itself. Or you can purchase the back issues through the backer kit as well. So there's that too.
That's oldmoonpublishing.com. And let me guess, the story from John started as a short story and went to a novelette.
But that could very well be the case. Yes.
No, it's the case. It's got to be the case.
We were very happy to have it at any length.
Yeah.
It was very much
writer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I said I wrote in a post a couple weeks ago that 3 of my favorite trilogy trinity of writers who write cosmic horror and weird fiction are those 2 guys and Brian Hodge. I always think of them, not that they write like each other, but for some reason I lump them together in my mind. They're just so damn good, So
I can see it. I really like Brian Hodge's The Immaculate Void. I think it's a novella. Yeah, really love that one.
Yeah, right here,
yeah, nice.
There it is.
Yep. Yeah, everyone should read The Immaculate Void. If you can't afford the there'll be another edition of Black Hole Sundown by Brian Hodge. So if you can't afford the one that's out right now, just wait. But in the meantime, for those out there who haven't read Brian Hodge, yeah, read his collections. If you want to read a novella, start with Immaculate Void. It's incredible. So Matt's a big fan of it too. He's talked about it several times. So.
Oh, and actually, there's it's on my mind because I did a review of the anthology for Old Moon, but that's Ellen Datlow edited an anthology I think maybe 2 years ago called Final Cuts. An anthology of like Hollywood and film related horror. Laird, John, and Brian, as well as many other really good authors, have some but those 3 in particular have some of my favorite stories I've read in the past couple of years. John Langan has one of my favorite vampire stories ever, told epistolary story. I love epistolary stories. Told through emails, I believe, between fictional versions of himself and Paul Tremblay. Really funny, cool story. Brian Hodge has one that is based on a fictional work by Werner Herzog, I think called like The Insanity of Penguins. I'm misremembering the title, but that was a really good one.
We had Michael Sisko on. Well, we've had him on several times. He's a good friend of ours too, and John was on. And so we're just talking. I've got this in my shorts, the movie shorts. Yes, not my actual shorts, Mark. Thank God, where does your mind go? The YouTube shorts on the YouTube channel. And so we're at the end of the interview and everything. All of a sudden, John just says, "So, Michael, could you give us like an impersonation of Werner Herzog, like eating salmon, for example?" I was like, okay. I had that question written down, but I'm glad you got to it first, John. And it's just on the spur of the moment. It's amazing. But yeah, and you guys probably
But John
know
Langan does a German Godzilla too. You've got to
That's
get
true.
him to do it for you.
Yeah, tell him you won't accept his story. Yeah, tell him Mike Davis and Matt Carpenter say you can't accept the story unless he does an impersonation of Godzilla for you, German Godzilla.
All right, I'll try.
And you guys probably know this anyway, but Ellen Datlow, if you see her name as editor on any anthology, it's going to be great.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of us here are fans of the cursed film genre,
Yeah.
the mysterious movie genre. In fact, Gemma Files' experimental films is just superb.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I have just a couple more things, and then we're going to wrap up. You guys are certainly welcome to stay for a few minutes or take off, but I want to say a couple things. First thing is, I did a deep background interview with Brian Evanson the other day, and I put it up on the Patreon. So my deep background series is just, pretty much what it sounds like, just all about the creator, whoever I'm talking to, how they got to where they are, what their story is. And it was a really great conversation. You mentioned Paul Tremblay. I'm recording one with him next week. So there's a lot of good stuff on the Patreon, and there's a lot of stuff coming up. So if you're not Patreon, it's just $5 a month. So I've got the link in the show notes, or Google Lovecraft Easing Patreon. Matt, everyone, our friend Soren Narnia is going to be on the show this summer. I emailed him and I said congratulations because Carla Gugino, am I saying her name right? The actress is starring in a horror movie based on the Cult podcast, a story from Knife Point Horror.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. She will star as a woman who puts her life on the line to protect her troubled, enigmatic cousin Winthrop, who has been targeted and hunted by a powerful supernatural force. And in a statement on the project, and I 1000% agree with this, Carrie Peake said, Winthrop captures the eerie dread that makes Knife Point Horror such a success. So I hope that they can bring that to the screen as well, because again, for those who don't know, the podcast Knife Point Horror is incredible. Is just incredible. And Soren's a very talented guy. He not only writes, I believe, almost all the stories, but narrates most of them too. And he has a way of narrating that just immediately brings you into the story and makes you feel this creeping sense of unease and dread. Something not good is going to happen. It's weird fiction, basically. Very well done. So, yeah. So there's that. And then you guys know about this Jaws at 50, the definitive inside story review? No?
I remember when Jaws first came out, I
I'm
was
sure you
15,
do.
I think. Yep. Well, I remember it was such a vivid movie. And then the next week we went to North Carolina, like Nag's Head for vacation. And I'm with my sister Mary, and we're standing there like in 6 inches of water on the coast and saying, well, no sharks can get us here. And then like a 3-foot catfish came out of the deep, swam around behind us, and then back out. I stepped right out onto the
Are
sand.
you
Saying,
serious?
no, I'm not taking any chances, man.
That's amazing. Well, Jaws at 50, the definitive inside story is set to premiere on National Geographic on July 10th, followed by Hulu and Disney Plus on July 11th. So,
Plus, it's getting a theater release. You could look at your area
oh,
in, I think, August or so. You can see Jaws on the big screen again.
if you would want to do that to yourself.
It's a thrill ride if you've never seen it. And if you're the kind of guy who's watching Santa Jaws and Sharks of the Corn, you really need to go back to the original.
Frankenfish.
You leave Sharks of the Corn alone.
What was it? day before yesterday was the 50th anniversary, or was it last night? I don't know. We just Kim and I watched Jaws for about the 1000th time because it's in my top 5 movies of all time. All right, if you've got 2 minutes, I'm going to give you a quick anecdote. The month before,
hang on a second.
All right, have you got it?
Good.
Okay. The month before Jaws came out in 1975, I was 16, and we were down at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and my friend Raymond and I we were off season, so there were no lifeguards or anything. So we swam out as far as one can swim out and not die, and it's a wonder we didn't. But fins started popping us around us, and so my friend Raymond was, like white as a sheet, and I know I looked exactly the same way. And so we decided we better head back, and our hotel looked about this big up on the shore. And so we're swimming and swimming and swimming, and the current is kind of holding us back a little. But about that time, some seaweed up and wrapped itself around my leg, and I may have been the first person in history to do a quantum leap, because the next thing I knew, I was running my ass off up the beach, and Raymond was about
Attack
a mile
of the killer seaweed
behind me. Yeah, it was a bunch of dolphins. I mean, we were out there basically with the dolphins. But then I saw Jaws the next month, and it just brought that horror right back home to me. So Jaws has been one of my favorite movies ever since.
Well, there you go. Jaws at 50. You can watch that on, if you got Hulu, you can watch it on July 11th. Speaking of John Langan.
And Carpenter's got something there.
Yep.
Just a reminder that there's a podcast prize. You can win a copy of House of Windows by the ubiquitous John Langan. Just send an email to easyandprizes@gmail.com. We'll draw a winner in 6 or 8 weeks. You got plenty of time to get your entry in. You could win it. And then I also, Mike, would you mention again for the Patreons, we're going to have our next Lovecraft horror story discussion coming up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to be putting the Shadow Out of Time that we recorded on the Patreon this week. So.
And then I think our next story you thought we had decided was the Cats of Ulthar.
You decided. I said, yeah, that's fine with me.
So I think we're all in agreement and nobody's allowed to say anything else.
I think that's right. That sounds right.
It's right.
Yep. And what's next for movie night? And then we'll adjourn here.
Big ass spider. Since Matt's allowed to say what it is and nobody can complain, I'm gonna say big ass spider. He's been threatening to show it for 10 years now.
I love that movie, but
yeah.
Oh,
there's nothing wrong with that movie.
It's about a spider.
Yeah.
It's right there in the title. It's one of the
like
three.
On a skyscraper or something.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Did you ever see
Gold
it?
right there. No, that's why I've been waiting for you to show it.
You Mike should watch it.
Yeah.
But
For spiders, though, go for
guys,
Kingdom of the Spiders. For spiders, man, with Shatner. Come on, it's the best.
Shatner overacting in Kingdom of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell
the
yeah.
best part about Lovecraft Easy movie night, everyone out there, is the MST3K that happens in the chat with everybody at the same time. It's awesome.
Matt posts the link every Saturday in the Facebook group, Lovecraft Easy Community. Just search there. If you're not on Facebook, email me, and I'll make sure you get the information. So if you want to join movie night. So, anything else, guys? Paul, really
No,
great
I'm
to see
good.
you.
Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, you and your
Thanks for
friend.
coming.
So last time we were on, somebody said, "When am I posting more books from Rick?"
Right.
Well, that shit has happened.
That shit has happened.
Yeah, I've unpacked 5 boxes already, and it's insane. Like the boxes I unpacked today were like everything that Talbot Mundy ever wrote.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah. Like in hardcover.
Oh my Lord.
Wow.
So, and then I have a whole Xerox box of Sax Romer hardcovers.
Oh my goodness.
and they're not Fu Manchu books.
That's really incredible. That
Yeah.
those Talbot Mundy books. Oh my goodness.
And then like they're buried in those boxes are things like this,
Yeah.
which I'd never heard of before. I know James Ambule's work. I just never saw this one ever before. And there were
I don't
3
think I
copies.
know.
You don't have that, Matt.
No, I
I'll
don't.
send it to you.
Cool.
Because there were 3 copies of this. I can't even find anything about this book, and he had 3 copies.
Wow.
I don't understand it. There were Willem Pugmire chapbooks that I've never even heard of.
That you've never heard of?
That
That's
I've never
weird.
heard of. Yeah.
That's strange.
Yeah.
'Cause, yeah.
So, and then there was this was right up my alley, an annotated Herbert West Reanimator.
Annotated by whom?
Jeffrey Toll. Never heard of it. It's from
No.
Radio Free Atlantis Productions.
Goodness.
But here it is. So right up my alley, right?
Well, Graham, Julian, thanks for being here also. Please remember to support Old Moon Quarterly if you like that kind of stuff, which I think just about everyone listening does. And Paul, really great to see you again. And
Thank you.
yeah, everyone, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and we'll see you